Before we begin, imagine this for a moment. You're standing in a room filled with the smartest engineers money can buy. 20 experts from the world's biggest automotive companies have spent weeks trying to solve a problem. They've used advanced computers, expensive diagnostic tools, and years of experience. Then a struggling single father walks in wearing oil-stained work clothes. 5 minutes later, he solves the problem nobody else could. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. But before we get into this incredible story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this prove that talent doesn't always wear a suit, and sometimes the greatest genius is hiding in the places nobody bothers to look. Now let's begin. The city of Chicago was buzzing with excitement. One of the most successful businesswomen in America, Victoria Langston, had just purchased a brand new Bugatti Chiron. The car was worth nearly $4 million. For Victoria, the Bugatti wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol. A symbol of her success. A symbol of her power. A symbol that reminded everyone how far she had come from her humble beginnings. Victoria was known for being brilliant, demanding, and extremely confident. She ran a technology company valued at over $2 billion and employed thousands of people. People often said there was no problem she couldn't solve. And Victoria believed them. The day her Bugatti arrived, reporters gathered outside her headquarters. Cameras flashed. Employees applauded. Victoria smiled proudly as she stepped inside the driver's seat. The engine roared like a beast. Everything seemed perfect. Until 3 weeks later. While driving to an important investor meeting, the Bugatti suddenly lost power. Warning lights flooded the dashboard. The engine sputtered. And the world's most advanced hypercar rolled to a stop on the side of the road. Victoria was furious. Immediately, she contacted Bugatti specialists. The car was transported to one of the most respected luxury automotive service centers in the country. There, a team of engineers began working. One engineer became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 10. Eventually 20 highly trained specialists were assigned to the problem. Every diagnostic test produced confusing results. The software appeared normal. The fuel system seemed perfect. The electrical systems passed inspection. Yet the problem remained. Days turned into weeks. The Bugatti refused to cooperate. Millions of dollars in expertise stood helpless before a machine that wouldn't explain itself. The story spread through automotive circles. Soon engineers from different states were discussing the mystery. Nobody could understand it. Victoria became increasingly frustrated. She had paid millions for perfection. Instead, she owned the world's most expensive paperweight. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a man named Daniel Carter was finishing another long day. Daniel was 38 years old. He worked in a small garage tucked between an old grocery store and a closed warehouse. The garage wasn't impressive. The paint was peeling. The equipment was old. And business was often slow. But Daniel had something many larger shops didn't. Experience. For nearly 20 years he had repaired engines of every kind imaginable. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. He didn't have fancy certifications hanging on the wall. But he understood machines. More importantly, he listened to them. Life hadn't been easy for Daniel. 5 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness. Since then, he had been raising his 8-year-old daughter Emma alone. Every morning he packed her lunch. Every evening he helped with homework. Every night he worried about bills. There were months when he wasn't sure how they would survive. But somehow they always did. Emma was his entire world. One evening while eating dinner, Emma noticed her father staring silently at a stack of unpaid invoices. "You'll figure it out," she said with a smile. Daniel laughed softly. "What makes you so sure?" Because you always do. Those words stayed with him. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A towing company driver entered Daniel's garage. The driver was an old friend. "You won't believe what I saw today," he said. He explained the mystery surrounding Victoria Langston's Bugatti. Daniel listened quietly. When the story ended, he shrugged. "Interesting." The driver laughed. 20 engineers can't solve it. Daniel returned to work. But something about the story bothered him. Not because he wanted fame. Not because he wanted money. Because machines usually tell the truth. And if nobody could find the problem, it meant everyone was looking in the wrong place. A week later, Victoria's company organized one final inspection. Several experts gathered to review the case. As a publicity move, they announced that any mechanic who believed they could solve the problem was welcome to examine the vehicle. Most people saw it as a joke. Daniel saw it as an opportunity. The next day, he drove to the facility. When he arrived, several engineers glanced at his old pickup truck and exchanged amused smiles. One looked at Daniel's worn boots and grease-covered shirt. Another smirked. "You're here for the Bugatti?" Daniel nodded. A few chuckles spread through the room. The atmosphere reminded him of every time people had underestimated him. But he was used to it. Victoria herself happened to be present. She looked Daniel up and down. "You think you can do what 20 engineers couldn't?" Her tone wasn't cruel. Just skeptical. Daniel smiled politely. "I don't know." The room grew quiet. "But I'd like to take a look." Victoria crossed her arms. "You have 5 minutes." Some engineers laughed openly. 5 minutes? The experts had spent hundreds of hours. Daniel walked toward the car. He didn't rush. He didn't connect expensive computers. He didn't open a laptop. Instead, he simply listened. He started the engine. Closed his eyes. And listened. Then he walked around the vehicle. Touched a section near the rear compartment. Started the engine again. Listened once more. After less than 5 minutes, he shut it off. The room waited. Daniel looked at Victoria. "May I remove one panel?" The engineers exchanged confused looks. Permission was granted. Daniel removed the panel. Reached inside. And disconnected a tiny aftermarket sensor hidden deep within the system. The room stared. Nobody spoke. Daniel restarted the engine. The Bugatti purred flawlessly. No warning lights. No hesitation. No power loss. Perfect. Absolute silence filled the room. One engineer checked diagnostics. Everything was normal. Another engineer repeated the tests. Still perfect. A third engineer verified the results. The problem was gone. Victoria couldn't believe it. "What was it?" she asked. Daniel pointed toward the small sensor. "A tracking device." Everyone looked confused. Daniel explained. Months earlier, a security contractor had installed an advanced tracking system. The sensor occasionally sent corrupted signals that confused the vehicle's computer. The failures appeared random. The issue was rare enough to avoid detection during most tests. The engineers had focused on complex possibilities. Nobody considered a tiny aftermarket component. The room stood frozen. 20 experts had overlooked the simplest answer. Because they were searching for something complicated. Victoria stared at Daniel. "You solved it in 5 minutes." Daniel smiled. "No." Everyone looked at him. "It took 20 years." The room became quiet again. Because everyone understood exactly what he meant. The 5 minutes were simply the result of decades of experience. Years of listening. Years of learning. Years of mistakes. Years of perseverance. Victoria felt something she rarely experienced. Humility. For weeks she had watched experts attack the problem with technology. Daniel approached it with understanding. That afternoon she invited him into her office. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. For the first time, Victoria learned about his life. His daughter. His struggles. His garage. His dreams. When Daniel finally left, he assumed that was the end of the story. It wasn't. The following week, Victoria visited his garage. Without cameras. Without reporters. Without publicity. She saw the worn tools. The leaking roof. The aging equipment. She also saw customers who trusted Daniel completely. That trust couldn't be purchased. It had been earned. A few days later, Victoria made an announcement. Her company would launch a new technical training initiative. And she wanted Daniel to lead it. The program would identify talented mechanics overlooked by traditional systems. People with real-world skills. People who had been underestimated. People like Daniel. The offer came with a salary larger than anything he had ever imagined. Daniel accepted. Not for himself. For Emma. Months later, their lives had transformed. The bills disappeared. The stress faded. Emma finally had the stability every child deserves. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Emma asked a question. "Dad, why do people keep calling you a genius?" Daniel smiled. Then looked toward the horizon. "I'm not a genius." Emma laughed. "Then what are you?" Daniel thought for a moment. Finally he answered. "I'm someone who never gave up learning." Emma nodded slowly. And perhaps that was the real lesson all along. Not that a single dad fixed a Bugatti. Not that 20 engineers failed. Not that a CEO was humbled. The real lesson is this. Never underestimate someone because of their appearance. Never assume success only belongs to those with titles. Never believe that talent only exists in expensive offices. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is carrying years of wisdom no degree can teach. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the answer everyone else is searching for. And sometimes, all it takes is one opportunity for the world to finally see what was there all along. If this story inspired you, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that hard work, perseverance, and humility still matter. Because your breakthrough may be much closer than you think. And just like Daniel, the world may be one opportunity away from discovering your true value.